BDSM, or bondage, discipline, sadism, masochism, domination, submission, is, well, you can think of that as a desire for certain things and as a lifestyle, and the need, the desire to be dominated or submitted to someone's desires, the desire to cause pain or be caused pain during sex, that's always existed. That's nothing new. What is fairly new is a lifestyle, is a community of people who practice this on a fairly regular basis, and are teaching each other how to do it better, how to do it well, develop a set of skills and implements and toys to make this work. And in the post 50 Shades of Grey sort of world, that probably is getting a little bigger because it's now more out in the open as a possible lifestyle. And a lot of those people who had maybe milder versions of those desires will now feel more comfortable sharing them with their partners, exploring them. And so I think we definitely have more freedom nowadays, and more people are aware of this as a possibility, and they're going to explore. I don't think the BDSM lifestyle or subculture is going to grow exponentially because of that, but I think more and more people are going to be incorporating elements of BDSM into their relatively vanilla lives otherwise. As to how it relates to non-monogamy, it's there is a big overlap there. There's no doubt. All studies on BDSM communities find that many of them are non-monogamous in some way, and rates of non-monogamy in BDSM practitioners and communities are much higher than the 4 or 5% that we see in the general population. The reason for that, there are probably a couple of different reasons. One, these are people who have challenged society's norms about what's acceptable and what's not in the sexual realm in one aspect, and so it's easier for them to also challenge the norms in a different aspect, which is the monogamy versus non-monogamy. On the other hand, BDSM is a very interesting interesting lifestyle or phenomenon where there's so many different things that you may like in the BDSM world. In the vanilla kind of sex, there are only a few things. There's oral sex, giving oral, receiving oral, there's vaginal, there's anal. More or less, those are the options. And it's much easier to negotiate and find people who like the same sorts of things that you like with those 4 or 5 different activities. In BDSM, there are hundreds and upon hundreds of different things that you may or may not like. Spanking this way and that way with this implement, that implement, suffocating, needles, urine play, pony play. There's so many different things. And finding one person who has the exact same, set of interests to complement your set of interests is pretty difficult. They may have some things that they also want to, where you overlap, but not all of those things. And so you kind of go and find those other needs that you need satisfied from other people. Another thing, often with BDSM, when people play with other people, there's no intercourse. There is no sort of full-on sex the way we think of sex in the more vanilla world. So maybe that is an easier way for people to say, yes, I have other partners, but we only do certain things that don't involve the traditional idea of what sex is. That is one of the certainly one of the stereotypes that people have, that they have all sorts of sort of negative mental health correlates, and that they're certainly less well adjusted, than monogamous people. There's really no evidence for that. There are studies that have been done, not too many. The research on consensual non-monogamy is still fairly young. There have only been studies in the last 5 years or so really looking into that. But the stuff that we do have finds that for the most part, the mental health of CNM people is no different, is no better or worse than the mental health of monogamous people on average. We certainly need more research to look more deeply into specific types of outcomes. But yeah, there's absolutely no reason to believe that that's the case. Funny enough, there's also no reason to, it seems like there's no reason to believe that they're even more sexually unhealthy. So, one of those big stigmas that people have, and one of the first criticisms that people have when, say, I write about consensual non-monogamy is, well, I don't want any diseases, I don't want to die of AIDS or whatever. It's this big fear. There is evidence that people who are in CNM relationships, when they have sex with people other than their primary partners, they are much more likely to use condoms, to have a conversation with that new partner about STI testing and results, about past sexual history. They're more likely to use the condoms properly and not make a number of different condom errors. They're less likely to be drunk and therefore forget condoms and do silly things when compared to people who are in ostensibly monogamous relationships but actually cheating on their partners, which happens quite often. So the few studies that we now have that have looked at STI rates, asking people, have you ever had in your lifetime chlamydia, gonorrhea, HIV, herpes, find that there is no difference in the rates of STIs, lifetime prevalence of STIs between CNM and monogamous people, even though the CNM people have more partners, undoubtedly, significantly more partners, but not more diseases.